Thank you to Omaze for sponsoring tonight's video.
Ooh lordy, you hear that? Toby is freaking out tonight. Let's go see what's going on. Hey buddy boy, what's going on?
Hey buddy boy, how's it going, pal? How's it going, Poochie? Huh?
How are you doing? You doing good?
How you doing? You doing good, buddy? You doing good?
Sit.
Good boy. Good boy. Yeah.
So this right here is my livestock guardian dog. His name is Toby, and I love him very, very much.
Come on Toby dog, let's go on patrol.
So far in my short farming career, I've only had really 2 horrible days here. Probably the most horrible day was the day that little barn cat got hit by a car and we thought she died. I cried myself to sleep that night and it was absolutely awful. But the second worst day here on our farm was about 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago to this date. And that was the day of the mink attacks. You see, up until that point, on our farm we hadn't had to deal with any predators. But one night, this wily little mink snuck into my duck house and murdered a duck and injured many of my ducks. The aftermath of that experience was absolutely awful. I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I had screwed everything up. It just made me feel absolutely awful. And so that night I did my best to lock down the duck house and make sure everything was secure. I set up security cameras to keep watch. I even set up a couple of traps just in case that guy came back. And lo and behold, he came back the next night and killed a couple more ducks. You know, the first night that it happened, it was completely excusable. You know, I was a little bit lackadaisical when it came to my security measures, and so boom, when that mink hit, it was out of nowhere. But the second night in a row, that was complete farmer failure right there, and I just felt awful. And over that next year, I took several measures to improve the situation. Number 1, I got much more focused on my security protocols. Number 2, I got much more focused on having secure housing that was weasel-proof. And number 3, just as fall was turning into winter, we added an adorable livestock guardian puppy to our farm, and his name was Toby.
Wow Toby, the snow is really starting to melt. Well, looks like we got a Toby turd. Toby dog, did you make that? Yeah, that's you. I know it's you.
Dogs are a responsibility. Dogs are a hassle. Dogs are a task that you have to manage. And if I'm being totally honest with you guys, I didn't really want to have a dog here on my farm. You know, growing up, I had gotten a dog that I had completely screwed up training, and I'd been sort of scarred by that experience, so much so that I refused to own a dog throughout my entire adult life. But when I let that little Maremma puppy out of his crate and loose on here on this farm, he absolutely found his way into my heart. And I worked really hard and did everything I possibly could to make sure he would be trained and be an effective guardian on this farm and do all the right things.
There's one guy who's definitely not disappointed about this weather change. What are you doing there, Toby Toboggan? Come on, buddy.
You know, recently I was talking to a group of folks who were thinking about starting farms and homesteads of their own, and they asked me what was the one piece of advice I could offer them as they were starting the process of planning out their own property. And after being here on our farm now for about 3 years, I would say that the number 1 piece of advice that I have is you need to think about your farm as an ecosystem. You know, we're all so quick to think about wild areas and natures as being ecosystems in terms of having different elements that all sort of work and fit together, where you have things like plants and insects and scavengers and herbivores and carnivores and bigger carnivores, and all of those animals sort of work and fit together. But too often people think about their farm and homestead as something very distinct and civilized and different. And I am here to tell you guys that that is the wrong way to look at it. You need to think about your farm as this giant ecosystem. You have all these different organisms working together to create one cohesive ecosystem. Because even as I think about our farm here at Goldshaw Farm, there's very much a connection with every critter that's on here, as well as how the land is laid out, as well as our climate. boy, Toby's at it. He senses something way off in the distance. By the way, while Toby's barking off this predator, this is probably a good chance for me to tell you about tonight's video sponsor, Omaze. Omaze is an organization that gives away one-of-a-kind prizes and experiences while donating money to chosen charities all across the world. And right now, they're launching a campaign where you can actually win a tiny house. And this tiny house is freaking cool. If you enter into this campaign, you get a chance to win a tiny house built by Tiny Heirloom. The house is worth up to $150,000, plus the taxes and the shipping costs are all covered. You can fully customize the house of your dreams and choose everything from the architectural style to the luxury finishing touches. You also get a personalized design consultation with the team at Tiny Heirloom. For those of you guys out there who are thinking about starting your own homestead and buying some raw land, a tiny house like this could be just such a cool addition to your property and such a great way to live. And the really cool thing about this Omaze campaign is that the charity that it supports is Girls Build. Girls Build is a nonprofit who teaches young girls the basics of carpentry, electrical, plumbing, roofing, painting, and auto and bike mechanics. And they show young women that these types of skills aren't just meant for the boys. The way this works is, when you donate $10 to Girls Build, you are entered for your chance to win that tiny house. So if you want to potentially win a great tiny house, as well as support an outstanding organization like Girls Build, go to omaze.com/goldshaw. All the details are right there and you'll have your chance to win. You know, it's always so funny to me to hear Toby barking off the predators. You guys hear that? Coyotes are out tonight. Do you hear it? You know, on nights like this, when the coyotes would be out like that, ordinarily I would not get a wink of sleep. But now that we have Toby on the farm, I rest very easy. You know, that's why he probably started freaking out a couple of minutes ago. He must have known that they were coming. You know, Toby dog, it's so funny to hear you bark like that. You're so lovable and soft, but at the same time, he is an absolute scary demon when you hear him bark in the middle of the night like that, huh? Yes, you are. Yes, you are, buddy. Because our farm is a poultry farm, there are certain animal systems that we need to invite into the mix beyond the poultry to keep things in balance. Because our ducks and chickens, as well as the geese in the winter, eat all of the grains and corns that I bring onto the farm, that attracts rodents. They spill their food everywhere and the rodents like to get into the mix of it and eat it. So in order to keep our rodent population in balance, I need to have something like a barn cat to manage that animal population. Because we're attracting those rodents also attract certain predators. So foxes, coyotes, owls, hawks, they love to eat rodents. And so they're often around these premises looking for those rodents. And if they see one of our birds, that right there is like a bonus meal. That's much easier to catch and it's much more filling than just a mouse. So in order to manage those larger, more dangerous predators, I needed to have an apex predator here on the farm. And that's the role that Toby Dog plays. You know, Toby's not out there fighting these animals off. He's not fighting with coyotes. He's not fighting with bobcats. You know, I've never seen him tangle with any animal whatsoever. The closest I've seen him come is when, like, our neighbor's dog comes from across the street and barks at Toby from the other side of the fence, and they snarl at each other and Toby stands his ground. But what Toby's really doing is he's creating a bubble that protects our farm. He's scaring off all of the coyotes and the bobcats and the bears. He's telling them that this area, this ecosystem right here is his. And all those other little predators better move along or they're gonna have to tangle with him. And that's one reason why Toby Dog is so effective at his job. But there is a second reason why Toby is so successful, and that comes down to his gentle, lovable nature. And that's probably my favorite part about him. You see, Toby is full of kindness and love. I see it in the way that he's so patient with the animals on our farm. Whether it's Pablo Barncat, who's become a real playmate for him, or the geese that are always getting up in his business, or the chickens that are constantly trying to eat Toby's food and they never ever give him a moment of peace and leave him alone. You know, one of my favorite things to do in the morning is watch Toby with those chickens. He will stand his ground and eat his food, But he also knows how to move them along and get them out of his way so that they're not eating his food. He will head fake them and kind of scare them off, but I'm not worried about that behavior because it's not actually aggressive behavior. It's the behavior of a sophisticated farm dog who knows how to work with other animals.
And for me, that's one of the reasons why I love him so much. Yes, I do, buddy. I do.
You know, I was texting with Toby's breeder the other day, and she sent me a couple of new pictures of baby Toby. You know, when you look at him, it's just that little bit of a fluff ball, and that look on his face just melts my heart. And so I know I brought Toby dog onto this farm as a working dog, and he most definitely has a job here on this farm. But I also think it's important to recognize and talk about the fact that I absolutely love that dog. He means the world to me. He is my best friend and constant companion. You know, when I get out to the farmyard every morning to do my chores, he's right there, happy to greet me. It doesn't matter if it's 75 degrees and sunny or -10 and snowing. He's got a smile on his face and a wag of his tail, and all he really wants me to do is scratch him on the head. You know, I can think back to points in my life when my heart was really closed off to things, where I was so worried about getting hurt or so worried about screwing something up that I didn't open my heart up to a possibility of something new, something different. When I first moved to this farm, people asked me over and over and over again, when was I gonna get a farm dog? They kept insisting that your farm isn't really a farm until you have a farm dog. And to be quite honest, I fought them. Because of screw-ups I'd made in the past and mistakes I'd made when I was a kid, I just didn't have my heart open to the idea. But as I've become a guy who's squarely middle-aged at this point, I gotta say that that's maybe one of my bigger regrets in life, that I've had periods where I've kept my heart closed off to things. Whether it was not being open to a person, or not being open to an idea, or even not being open to a pooch like Toby. I was always so afraid of getting hurt, or screwing something up, or not doing something right, or proving people wrong, that I would deprive myself of that thing just to prove a point, or just to keep myself protected. But the older and older I get, the more and more I realize that that is such the wrong way to live life. And the more you can live a life where you keep an open heart and you keep yourself open to possibilities, the more fulfilling that life's gonna be for you guys. So yeah, keep that in mind, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Come on, Toby dog.